greatness of a nation and its progress can be judged by the way they treated their animals.
Dog meat trade, it's to blame. Dog meat trade, it's to blame.
Stop the torture!
Stop the pain.
Stop the torture! Stop the pain! Dog meat trade is to blame!
Dog meat trade, it's to blame.
Stop the torture! Stop the pain!
Stop the torture, stop the pain.
Dog meat trade is to blame!
Dog meat trade, it's to blame.
Stop the torture! Stop the pain! Stop the dog and cat meat trade!
get off the road, so it's a bit of a shame I can't show you the glory of this march right now from the front.
Hello and welcome to the Stop Dog and Cat Meat Trade Worldwide Awareness March right here in Melbourne. On behalf of all the organisers, the speakers, the volunteers, and more importantly the dogs and the cats who have suffered through the dog meat trade, I extend a very warm welcome to you. Please give yourselves a big hand for being here today and making some noise! Thank you. My name is Ron and it's my honor to be your MC for this event. And before we begin, we'll do a quick traditional Aboriginal acknowledgement. We are gathered on the Kulin Nation, the land of the Wurundjeri people, and we send our respect and gratitude to all the nations all across the country, and pay our utmost respect to the First Nation people, Aboriginal Australia, and we acknowledge that the land we are on is special, spiritual, and sacred to them. Thank you for being here this morning. Let me start with a quick story to you. On 18th May 2013, which was almost 5 years ago, there was a group of people, about 20 or 30 very passionate animal activists, who gathered on Bird Street Mall for this exact rally. And I was the MC for that rally. We marched from Bird Street Mall all the way on Swanston Street to Flinders Street Station, and that was organised by Soy Dog. That was 5 years and 2 weeks ago. My question to you is this: has much changed since then? No. Let me ask you again, has much changed since then? No. And that's the reason why we are here today. Today is a worldwide action campaign. Auckland, New Zealand had the first campaign today. They're a few hours ahead, and from what I hear, it went really well. The goal today, thank you New Zealand, thank you Auckland, thank you, Kia ora, thank you. The goal today is very simple: to bring awareness about dog and cat meat consumption, not only here, also worldwide. And today you get to hear from not one, not two, not three, 4 very enlightened speakers who will tell you why they are doing what they are doing today. It's the first time a march of this magnitude has taken place in this great city we call Melbourne. And rest assured, we will not stop. You will get to hear from the speakers about what's happening worldwide. There will be some footage on TV screens, and let me advise you, some of the footage is pretty graphic. So if you are affected by the graphic content, please lean on the person next to you for support, because we are all here to help each other. Is that right? Yes! Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The Yulin Festival in China will take place from the 21st to the 30th of June. And approximately 10,000 dogs will be slaughtered for meat. And what's even more sad is that we have people from Australia going to attend that festival.
Shame!
Shame big time. Our goal is to make the whole nation know that we will not stand for animal cruelty, whether it's in this country, this state, this city, this hemisphere, this continent. If an animal is suffering, it is our problem right here, right now.
Yes!
On that note, it gives me great warmth to give you the first speaker for today. The first speaker for today is Lee Hawkerdale. And after having her eyes opened to the cruelty in the dog meat trade in Thailand and Korea in 2012, she has represented the Soy Dog Foundation here in Australia to raise awareness. And she has volunteered at the Soy Dog shelter in Thailand. She is now the volunteer coordinator for Soy Dog Australia, and she's also a very passionate supporter for many different animal rights organizations. On a personal note, I have known Lee for the past 6 years, and in those 6 years, she has campaigned tirelessly against many different animal organizations who are abusing animals. Her passion speaks for itself. She's like my sister, we're very close. All right, guys, she supports the All Blacks in rugby, but we will overlook that just for this, all right? She's All Blacks, I'm the Wallabies. We don't see eye to eye, but today we are united. So please join me in welcoming Soy Dog Foundation's Lee Rockadal.
Thanks, my brother Ron. As Ron just said, 5 years ago we were part of a small march, just 20 people who showed up to stand and demonstrate against the dog meat trade, not only in Thailand but around the world. So the numbers today increased. I don't know how many people here, so thank you so much for that. It's wonderful and it's amazing. And so we'll get the emotional stuff out of the way first. So I'd like to start with one of my favourite quotes from the Hindu Gita, which is, when you feel the suffering of every living thing in your heart, that is consciousness. And today, as we look around at the banners and the footage, our consciousness is awakened, and we're disgusted and heartbroken at the torture inflicted upon the dogs and cats around the world. They're stolen off the streets, taken from loving families, and bred into a cruel, violent industry to be food. So this has to stop. And the fact is, in our very own country, it is currently legal to consume dog and cat meat, and like many of you, I probably never even thought about it, but it is, and today we march to change that locally on a state and federal level. As recently as 2016 in Victoria and 2015 in New South Wales, the media reported evidence of dogs and cats allegedly killed for dog meat, but there are no statistics available in relation to the sale and consumption of dog meat in Australia, because without proof of the sale of the dog meat, these cases can only be recorded as animal cruelty. So we're here today not only to bring awareness and demonstrate against the dog meat trade worldwide. We, the people and the pets of Victoria, want to change the laws Australia-wide to make it illegal to consume dog and cat meat. So a little bit about myself. I was first made aware, as Ron said, of the trade in 2012. I was walking down Bourke Street Mall and there were some people demonstrating with yellow flowers and dogs, and I wondered what it was all about. So I walked up to them and I took a pamphlet, and they were protesting against the South Korean Yellow Dog Festival, or Bokmal Days, which happen every year during the hottest 3 days in July and August in South Korea, where the slaughter of over 2 million dogs occurs mainly at this time to supply the demand for a soup during just 1 month. And I couldn't believe it. Myself, growing up in New Zealand, we always had dogs. My father was a breeder of Dobermans. I had 2 dogs at the time, and I just didn't understand why people would do this to my best friends, to my most loving, loyal family members. So I took the pamphlet that day and found out more about the Soy Dog Foundation in Phuket, who to date have rescued over 16,121 dogs from the illegal trade into Vietnam. And I signed their petition. Now that I knew, I could not do anything. So the more I watched, the more I read, the more my heart cried, and I felt compelled to do something. And here we all are today, compelled to do something about this horrific trade. And I thank you for that. And whether you came across the rally and you've just joined us today, or you saw a pamphlet, or you saw it online, everything that we do to raise awareness helps. The more we talk about it, the more it gets talked about everywhere. And so I thank you for that. So On my most recent visit to the shelter in Phuket, I asked John Daly, who's the co-founder of Soy Dog, to give me some of his words to read out today on what Soy Dog is doing to end the dog meat trade, not only in Thailand but worldwide. So I'll just read some of that quickly to you, because we don't have a lot of time. In Thailand in 2011, like most other countries, South Asian Pacific countries, had no meaningful animal cruelty laws, no laws pertaining to the eating of domesticated dogs or cats. It did, though, like most other countries, have laws pertaining to disease control. It also had a population where the vast majority are Buddhist and are morally opposed to animal cruelty. Soy Dog, therefore, took a two-pronged approach. The first was to educate the Thai people on what was happening, to build up a movement demanding that the government take action and introduce effective laws. This was also backed by international petitions. In late 2014, Thailand's first animal welfare bill was passed by the military government. The second prong Soy Dog took was to use existing disease transmission laws. All the nations of Southeast Asia had pledged to eliminate rabies in the region by 2020, and every country in the world recognises the risk of rabies and imposes strict import regulations. The dog meat trade circumvents these regulations, and it is driven by profit and greed and corruption, in the same way that the trade in endangered species does. So in 2013 and 14, Soy Dog formed an alliance with an Asia Canine Pacific Association and 4 other organised groups and had conferences. As a result of the first conference, the Thai government agreed to step up efforts to stop smugglers, and more importantly, the Vietnamese government agreed to the ban of importation of such dogs into Vietnam. In 2014, the government representatives signed a memorandum of understanding to agree to a ban on border transportation for initial 5 years. In Vietnam, approximately 5 million dogs are slaughtered each year for human consumption, and Soy Dog is working with the Asia Canine Pacific Association and the government on television and the national television broadcaster to raise public awareness of the severe cruelty of the dog meat industry and the human health risks it poses. In addition to the partnership with the Vietnamese government and Vietnamese law enforcement agencies, Soy Dog is working to enforce laws which prohibit the industry, and training courses have started with the intention that they can care for the animals once the government has intercepted them in the future. In South Korea, Soy Dog is working with the senior government officials to enact stronger welfare laws with the ultimate aim of banning the dog meat industry. This has led to a ban on the slaughter of dogs at the Moran market. A dog is the key message Soy Dog is promoting in South Korea to challenge the perception that meat dogs are somehow different from pet dogs. By turning public opinion against the dog meat consumption and the farming of dogs, and by keeping up the pressure on lawmakers to make the industry legal, we hope to see the dog meat trade in Korea shut down for good. In China, Soy Dog has provided substantial financial assistance to many activists working on the ground to medically treat and care for hundreds of dogs saved from the country's dog meat trade and the notorious Yulin shops. Thank you. So, we know that the tide is changing. We know that there are more and more demonstrations. We see today by the number of people turned out. In the last weeks you would have seen a campaign by the Humane Society with several celebrities written a letter to the President Jokowi Widodo in Indonesia to end the trade. During the Winter Olympics in South Korea, many people urged the South Korean leaders to end the cruel trade, and just this last week the last barbaric butcher was closed down in the Moran market. So all around South Korea, farms have been closed down. In a recent poll in South Korea, only 20% of men aged in their 20s consumed dog and cat meat in the last year. So eventually these changes will come. We know this. The more we talk about it, the more we share, the more we stand up against it. And we start here today in our very own community. In Victoria, we will not stand for this cruel and barbaric practice of the consumption of our domesticated friends. They are not food. Ban it now and set an example for other countries and other nations to join us as the Hope and Wellness Foundation are pushing to change laws in America. We stand here today because we want freedom for all dogs and cats. Our consciousness has been awakened and we stand up.
Please put your hands together one more for Lee. One more time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, Lee. You could clearly hear the passion in her voice and how much she's committed to helping dogs and cats all over the world. Next speaker is AJP's very own Bruce Poon. For the past 3 decades, that's more than 30 years, Bruce has been campaigning for animal rights issues, not just here in Australia, all over the world. He has left his job as a CEO in the information technology sector to focus on animal rights on a full-time basis, and his one big goal is to win political power for those who cannot speak for themselves. He is the national president for AJP, Animal Justice Party, and I think it's quite pertinent that we are gathered here today where more of his voice needs to be heard. On a personal note, I have known Bruce for about 9 years. We met at VegVic, and during those 9 years I have seen him fight many battles for animals on many different fronts. And that just goes to show that his passion is unstoppable and his commitment is undeniable. On that note, please welcome to the footsteps of Parliament House, AJP's very own Bruce Poon!
Fantastic to be with you all today here. Thanks for coming to help our friends, the cats and dogs. So how do we make sure that dogs and cats are never killed for food in Australia? How do we make sure that dogs and cats aren't killed for food overseas? I'm going to talk about my theory about how we make this work. But just first an introduction. Ron mentioned I've been fighting a few fights for animals over a long period of time. The challenge is we've lost a lot. We've lost a lot of those fights. There's a lot of abuse still going on. And it's frustrating to be fighting and losing and losing. So what are we to do? And ultimately what that led me to do was to explore the avenue that we hadn't tried, which is politics, and building political power on behalf of animals. So we've now got the Animal Justice Party, and we have administrations in every state and territory of Australia. We have regional groups. We've got hundreds of volunteers and thousands of members all across the country. And the Animal Justice Party is a machine, an organisation to turn all of our passion for animals into changes in legislation. And we're not just working for cats and dogs. Next week we'll be here in the same place, advocating on behalf of sheep and cattle and greyhounds that they want to ship overseas. And the week after that we'll be marching to end all slaughterhouses.
Yeah! Woo!
So let's talk about the order of actions here. It's probably going to happen that we can get a ban on the sale of and slaughter of cats and dogs here in Australia, and then continue to advocate for the end of the slaughter overseas. I think practically that's how it has to be done. We need to set the example first in an advanced Western country like this, where most people think that cats and dogs aren't slaughtered. Let's ban it once and for all. So how do we do that? Of course, in South Australia it is banned. In South Australia, the only state of Australia where you can't kill cats and dogs. Well, the first thing I can assure you, obviously, is that any of our current candidates in the Animal Justice Party get elected to the Victorian Parliament, they'll be very strong advocates to get a legislated ban on the killing of cats and dogs. If you don't like our candidates in the Animal Justice Party, then I suggest you join and stand yourself and get yourself elected to the Victorian Parliament. Then you can put a ban on killing cats and dogs. The other option practically is that there is a review of the animal cruelty laws coming up very soon in Victoria. There's going to be a replacement bill for the POCTA, the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. And I think it's quite important that we are aware of what that bill is doing and what they're going to make it into. It will recognise the sentience of animals. And I think there's a good opportunity that we could get a ban on the slaughter of cats and dogs into that bill. That will require political action, that will require demonstration and education, and that will probably require a lot of us talking to our MPs and making sure that that goes in and stays in that bill. But that's something that we could do in the next year to 2 years and have this banned in Australia. So that's what we'll be working towards, along with the NGOs and all the activists, to try and get that done here in Victoria and then ultimately in Australia as well. So how do we save cats and dogs overseas? Well, that's a lot harder, but let's start now. Obviously, education. We need to all talk about this, we need to share the information, we need to support the NGOs that are out there educating Australians and educating people in other countries about the problems with this trade. We need to demonstrate, we need to have rallies like this to show this is a concern. We need these petitions that you've all hopefully signed today, and we need to support those charities that are doing the work in the countries directly. And then we probably need to do more. We probably need to agitate against those people who are profiting from these trade. We need to hit them right in the wallet. We need boycotts, we need sanctions, anything we can do to take it to the next level, to show our displeasure with what goes on. And finally, political action. We need to support politicians that support animals and don't support politicians that don't support animals. A couple of years ago, this trade was a big problem in Taiwan as well. They're traditionally one of the Asian countries that have supported dog meat trade. And I met with a guy called Nick Yao from the Trees Party, which is the equivalent of the Animal Justice Party, but in Taiwan. And he explained one of their key campaigns was to try and end the trade. Along with, obviously, working with the NGOs and the rest of the animal activist community that exists in Taiwan. Well, in April 2017, it was banned. So it's now banned in Taiwan. It's illegal to slaughter cats and dogs. And I caught up with him again last October, and I'll be catching up with him again in a couple of weeks, and I want to know a lot more details about how they did it, what was done, what the campaign looked like, and how to run a successful campaign to stop the slaughter of dog and cat meat. So, lastly, just finishing up here, I just want you to know that your actions here are really appreciated. They can make a difference. Together, in solidarity with the animals, we can do this and many other things to help them. Share the information about the cruel trade. I think when people find out what actually happens to dogs and cats in this trade, they're appalled, and they need to know what to do with their feelings. Join and support the good charities that work in this space and that help animals. And of course, because I'm with the Animal Justice Party, vote, support, join or stand for the Animal Justice Party and win some real power for non-human animals. So if we can take action at all these levels, as NGOs, as political parties, building successful campaigns is like a pyramid with we get education at the base and political action at the apex. If we can take actions at all these levels over the next couple of years and change hearts and minds, I think we can also get laws changed. So thanks again for being here, and keep it up. Thank you.
Like I said, Bruce is not just an advocate, he's a warrior for animal rights. So put your hands together one more time for Bruce Bourne! Now, I'd like to just quickly build on something that Bruce said. And you know how Bruce said that if you don't like the people in AJP, come and do it yourself? Sometimes in the animal rights movement, some people tend to be quite critical of what others are doing. So the message is simple. Don't just tell us how to do it, show us how to do it. Step up, take action, and lead by example. That's our message today. Our next speaker this afternoon is very well known world over when it comes to caring for animals, empathy and kindness. Edgar's Mission is a place where people connect with other humans and other animals, and they realize what it means to walk on the path of compassion, kindness, and empathy. What many people don't know about Pam is that she had a shelter for dogs and cats called the Central Highlands Animal Shelter, where hundreds of animals were given a second chance thanks to Pam's dedication. On a personal note, I have been volunteering for Edgar's Mission for the last 9 years, and in those 9 years, I have seen Edgar's Mission save lives, empower lives, and connect lives. So I give you the lady that I like to call the angel for animals, but she is known world over as the lady in a hat with an animal next to her. So join me in welcoming the one and only Pam Ahern.
Thank you so much, Ron. I always feel terribly humbled when I hear your words of support, so thank you so much. Before I do start my talk today, I would actually like to acknowledge that we are meeting today on the land traditionally held by the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging. And I thank everyone for coming here today. I thank the organisers of this rally and the volunteers who made it happen, and everyone who's attended. You guys are awesome for believing that a kinder world is not only possible but is one we're going to drag her along with us. Tiny. She's shiny. She looks so neat above her feet. We call her Tiny Shiny. My name, as you know, is Pam Ahern, and to many people I am synonymous with pigs and indeed all farmed animals. After all, it was a pig in 2003 who trotted into my life and changed both of our lives forever. But what not so many people do realise is that it was a little one-time stray cat named Tiny who first ignited my fascination and love for animals in all their glorious shapes and forms. And it's something that the passage of time has actually failed to extinguish. Tiny and her +1 Blackie were the first animals to ever grace my world. And rounding out our family's contingent of 4-legged friends was Laddie, an affable yet goofy black Labrador, who occasionally mistook me for a tree as he became my constant companion as we navigated every inch of our family's backyard. To Laddie, I was the most important person in the world, and it was through his gentle presence that I was awakened to the incredible self-sacrificing loyalty of dogs that lends them so well to being best friends for we humans. And while I loved all 3 of those animals dearly, they were all different. If Tiny was sweet and affectionate and never complained as she became my surrogate doll and I pushed her around the backyard in a pram, Blackie wasn't. He was standoffish, aloof and most unaccommodating of my childhood whims. While Tiny loved cuddles and would dribble in delight, Blackie much preferred his own company and had his own self-imposed demarcation zone that he would fiercely defend with hisses and scratches. And woe to anyone who dared cross that line. Tiny loved nothing more then curling up each night into the nook created by my outstretched arm and my body. So eager was she for this, she would actually sit on my bed waiting for me to come in, and waiting patiently while I arranged myself. Then she would paw at the sheets, and then it was her turn to purr and purr and purr. After my hand found its way to her stomach and would be buried in that fur. My mum told me that sound that Tiny made was the happy sound, and she did it because she loved what I was doing to her. And such was my love of Tiny that I would try and stay awake as long as I possibly could, just to oblige her. But sleep usually ended up pulling me away, and poor old Tiny didn't get that much of a tummy rub. But I gave her my solemn promise that when I grew up, I would get a job that paid lots and lots of money, and I'd be able to employ someone that would rub her tummy all the time. Sadly though, yep, you guessed that never happened. I've grown and greyed, and I never got to fulfil that promise to Tiny, as I heartbreakingly learned that our animal friends never live as long as we humans do. So I stand here today to honour the lives of those 3 incredible individual animals. And I also stand here today to speak up for their not-so-lucky brethren, the ones who will never know the warmth and kindness of the love of a young girl, or will never know the safety of a loving family of whom they would become an integral part. I doubt that there would be a person here today whose life hasn't felt the gentle paw of a cat or the soft tongue of a dog as they left an indelible mark on your heart. Chances are that's why you are here. And there's no doubt too that same heart and your mind hasn't escaped one of those distressing, haunting images of cats and dogs who have been crudely, cruelly and without an ounce of compassion trussed up for the cat and dog meat trade. And no doubt too your heart and mind has been sickened. With culture and custom being no justification for cruelty, compassionate hearts around the world are rightly demanding an end to this needless and barbaric trade, which is a blight on us all. We here in Australia like to pride ourselves we are an animal-loving nature. We spend billions and billions of dollars every year on the animals who share our hearts and homes. And we've even enshrined our staunch belief in the protection of animals into legislation. No doubt you've heard of it. It's called the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. But when it comes to our protection of animals, we truly have been guilty of playing favourites. Treating animals not on their ability to suffer or their desire to experience the world and all of her magic, but rather the form an animal is taken, our familiarity with that animal, and the intended use we have of that animal has shaped the protection they receive. It is for this reason that I have long championed the cause of the animals who are farmed for food and fibre. But the inconsistencies in our animal protection laws are not that simple, and they most certainly do not end there. In October of 2002, a man was seen in an outer Melbourne suburb clutching a Staffordshire-cross 10-week-old puppy in a plastic bag, gesturing to onlookers that he intended to eat the hapless animal. And what followed sent animal lovers into a spin and the media into a frenzy, as our flawed animal protection legislation was shown to lay bare that the cats and dogs had too fallen through the gaps that had long claimed the farmed animals. You see, provided that man did not kill that puppy in a manner that contravened the Act, and that if he did not sell the meat from that puppy, he hadn't broken any laws. 16 years on, and little has changed, for in every state and territory in Australia except South Australia, it remains legal to eat cats and dogs. The fact that so little has been done to close this loophole begs the question, why? Why have we lacked the courage to do so? Why are we so quick to point a judgmental finger at other nations we consider less stellar in their protection of animals, when back home here we haven't even got our own backyard in order? It's easy to criticise others when it means that we don't have to change ourselves. It is, after all, an accident of geography that the family dog is our friend and not our food. I think the answer to the reason why this important issue hasn't risen more and we haven't changed those loopholes goes to some of the quotes that came out about the same time as the incident with a puppy in the plastic bag I just mentioned. The owner of the puppy was actually quoted in the media as saying, "In Australia, people go out to get a pie and not a dog." And ethicist Nicholas Tontafilippini was quoted as saying that he was not ethically opposed to the eating of dogs, providing they were not somebody else's dog. Now, these two statements say far more about our society and our ability to desensitise ourselves to the suffering of some animals than it does about dogs themselves. The then State Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Keith Hamilton, he vowed that he would toughen the meat industry laws to prevent the consumption of cats and dogs. But he didn't. And so Pandora's box remained closed. One of the many things that I think makes our country so great is that our laws reflect public thought. They don't drive it. And what that means is that each and every one of us has enormous power to shape the laws in this country. And I can think of no better time than this worldwide Cat and Dog Meat Awareness Day that we do so, that we keep the conversation going and be the true best friend of animals, close this loophole and inch us closer to that kind of world that we know is possible. Please, if you haven't already done so, this important issue with family and friends, and make sure you take it up with your elected members of government. W. Bruce Cameron, in his thought-provoking and often heartwarming book, A Dog's Purpose, weaved a tale that looked at the many and varied relationships we humans have with canines. And it tugged the reader to the irrevocable thought that true love never dies, and that every being who treads this earth has a purpose. And although I thought that my purpose as a small child was to rub the tummy of my cat Tiny, I have now given myself over to a far grander one, and that is championing the cause of all animals, because I know that regardless of the form they have taken, that they belong in our hearts, and most certainly not our stomachs. Thank you so much.
Please put your hands together one more time for the Angel for Animals, Pam Ahern. Okay, so now we'll do the march, and what I suggest is that we'll have the banners in the middle, and if you could walk on the sides, that'll be great. So this banner will be at the front, that banner will be at the back. We will march straight down Burke Street, then Little Burke Street, back on Swanson Street, all the way down to Burke Street Mall. Don't worry, we will be leading, so you don't need directions, just follow us. And once again, on behalf of all the dogs and the cats, thank you so much for coming. Give yourself a big hand, thank you.
Might be easy just to carry them all.
One of the friendliest places. Lovely.
Give me south the roadway.
And I can understand because there's
Dog in a pram.
No, you're right. Well, you get your own way home.
Yeah, well, they said that's the only week they had. Oh, were we supposed to? Yeah.
At the end of the day, like most people that are here are vegan, so it's not just, the message isn't just stopping the dog and cat meat trade, but stopping all meat trades, because all meat, you know, you have to put an animal through a slaughterhouse, get them stabbed in the throat and chopped up into little pieces before anything happens. You know, they're all sentient, they're no different. There's no difference between a sheep and a cow and a dog or a cat. There's literally, you know, from their perspective, they want to live just like a dog does, they want to live just like a cat does, you know. I think sometimes we choose to kill the animals that are the most gentlest. When has a cow or a sheep or a pig ever harmed a human? Or when has a chicken ever harmed a human, you know? Whereas if we would try to do that to like other dangerous animals, there's no way. animal abuse. No excuse for animal abuse.
There's no excuse for animal abuse. No excuse for animal abuse.
you're watching this, can you please share it so that more people can see this to raise more awareness, and share it to all the vegan groups that you're a part of, share it to all the animal lover pages that you're a part of. You know, more people need to see this, more people need to come out here and stand up and speak up. Maybe next year this march will be twice as big or 3 times as big. Usually that's how it works. Every year the numbers just grow so rapidly. Yeah, share it to all your friends, share it to anyone who you think this might resonate with. That's the hope, and that would be a dream come true.
Stop the torture! Stop the pain! Stop the torture! Stop the pain! The dog meat trade is to blame! Dog meat trade is to blame! Stop the torture! Stop the pain! Stop the torture! Stop the pain! The dog meat trade is to blame! Dog meat trade is to blame! Stop the pain! Stop the torture! Stop the pain! Stop the torture! Stop meat trade is to blame!
Thank you, Melbourne, for marching and being the voice for dogs and cats who are being mistreated and slaughtered. So give yourself a big hand for doing this march and big hand. It gives me great honor to give you a man who has been instrumental on many fronts of animal rights issues. Andy Monique is the Western Regional Leader for AJP in Victoria, and he's the lead upper house candidate at the upcoming state elections. He has been involved in almost every aspect of animal rights issues, including disposing of a drawn pushing their population in the Fair Life Export campaign. Andy believes in all forms of animal activism, the political, the education, and the active community engagement. He has always been a staunch trade unionist and believes that the ability to work together and be united against those who oppose and oppress is how all great social justice issues in history have been addressed and won. He believes that animal rights is the next new front in the struggle, and now is the time for all of us to unite and fight for the animals. On a personal note, I have known Andy for about 3 years, and this man never stops. He's like the Energizer Bunny, the vegan Energizer Bunny, who keeps going and going and going. So Melbourne, join me in giving it up for Andy Monique.
Thank you, Ron. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, I'd just like to mention that we meet here today on what is, was and always shall be First Nations people's land. This is the land of the Wurundjeri, the Warrawurrung and the Boonwurrung people, members of the Eastern Kulin Nations of Victoria. Ladies and gentlemen, today you have all heard some horrifying facts about the disgusting trade surrounding the consumption of those animals that have become so central, so ingrained in human existence that they are no longer thought of as being outside of the human family unit. They are deemed an essential part of it. We've heard that an estimated 30 million dogs and cats are tortured, dismembered alive, boiled and burned alive in the name of food, culture and celebration. All of those arguments are hollow. They are husks, and they do not survive any scientific, historic or nutritional examination. In fact, there is only one reason that this vile trade and practice survives: the celebration of human cruelty. Domesticated dogs and cats, my friends, animals that are so familiar with us that they approach us with complete trust and love. And they are betrayed by us to a painful, torturous death, because those who eat them believe that the high adrenaline levels caused by the terror they are experiencing tenderises the meat and increases the fictitious health benefits. Lies! Lies to justify the cruelty. We've heard it argued, ladies and gentlemen, from those who torture, murder and eat these companions of ours, that this is a cultural norm. That these same people point to the Yulin Dog Meat Festival as an example. Lies again to justify the cruelty, because Yulin has only existed since 2009. It is not an ancient festival to celebrate the summer solstice, nor is it a festival to celebrate culture, history or community. It is a festival to celebrate and revel in the darkest and cruelest aspects of humankind's nature. In fact, friends, across China, the consumption of dog meat only came about because of a political upheaval, where those who were opposed to the ruler at the time, who had made it illegal, were encouraged to openly commit acts of barbarity and eat dogs as a show of defiance to taunt their rival. base cruelty in the name of politics. A situation that we find ourselves in even today, with the continuation of the abhorrent live export trade. And if you thought that this was a practice confined to the countries that comprise Asia and Southeast Asia, you'd be horribly wrong, my friends. And trust me, I was as shocked as you to learn that this vile trade, this vile practice occurs also in Switzerland, northern Canada, Mexico, Greenland and Australia. In our backyard, it is here. The slaughter and selling market here is an underground operation, but it exists because of legal loopholes that do not outlaw the consumption of dog and cat meat. In fact, there is only one state in Australia that has completely banned the breeding, the sale and slaughter of dogs and cats, as well as banning the eating of them. And that state is South Australia. In every other state, it is not illegal to eat these family members that give us nothing but love and affection. And there is another card in this pack of cruelty, ladies and gentlemen, and that is behind the walls of these department stores and high-end boutiques that line this very mall that we meet in today. The buyers that work for these iconic stores have been deceived on more than one occasion, believing they were purchasing in bulk for national distribution clothing that they believe was lined with or used fake or faux fur, only to discover those garments were made from the pelts of these murdered dogs and cats, something that is illegal in Australia. These stores thankfully acted quickly and removed them from sale. However, the law is not omnipotent, and many of the products that people will buy in stores such as shoes, clothing, wallets, purses, and from hardware stores such as gardening and work gloves are also made from the skins of these animals, deliberately mislabelled, not by those buying them but by those selling them, from the country of origin. Our ability to intercept, inspect and reject these importations is woefully inadequate. But ladies and gentlemen, amidst all of this horror, there is hope. Before the US Congress is a bill, number HR 1406, which will make it illegal to breed, kill and slaughter and consume the meat of dogs and cats in 44 states. So the question can be asked, well, what about us? What about us here in the lucky country, the land of the fair go? What about Australia? Well, the answer is simple. Every state must follow the South Australian example and bring these laws into being here. It won't be hard. No one in the respective state parliaments would think twice about it. It is common sense. This is legislation that is strictly a stroke of the pen. But they must know about it first. They must be aware, and that is where you come in. You need to ring and write to your local member of parliament, both state and federal, and ask for a meeting where you can sit down and explain the issue. And respectfully tell them what you want done. Demand of them what you want done. Tell them that these same meetings are being held across the country, in the offices of every state politician and every federal one as well, so they won't be flying solo. They will have crossbench support. They will have bipartisan support, so there's no need to be nervous about sticking their neck out. Tell them if they don't do so, then the thousands that have signed the petition that you can find online at change.org and that has been circulating today will be instructed to vote against them and remove them from office. Because that is the power of a democracy. Change. Change by the voter. Repeat that exercise, ladies and gentlemen, with the federal members, because strong state-based legislation needs even stronger federal legislation. Legislation that bans the importation of all fur and leather goods into Australia. All of them. And if we can do it here, then other nations will take up the mantle. Because individually, we are one voice. Together we are united. And as a group of nations, we stand a far greater chance of enacting the change that we want to see. The time is now, ladies and gentlemen, to protect the animals that are part of us, that are part of our families, who ask nothing more of us than affection and love, something they give to us without question. It is time for Victoria, for Australia, to become part of an ever-increasing group of nations that will no longer tolerate the torture, the murder, the betrayal of these animals, the betrayal of the bond between humankind and animal kind. Because, friends, we are all animals, all of us, and not one of us can exist without the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up one more time for the unstoppable Andy Maddock. Okay, so we are pretty much done. Thank you to you for coming. You know what? Give yourselves a big hand. Thank you so much for making this possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for that. Now, I want to call upon the three ladies who made this possible today. I call them the source behind the force. Lee, Mon, and Tania, come on here, please. Come here, come on. They have worked hard for months and months and months to make this possible, so please, show your love. Give them a big hand, these three ladies. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And they say thanks everyone for coming. Now, the march is done. Can you please return all the posters to the marshals who are at the steps over there? They've been the steps, so please return all the posters. Keep making noise. We have a long way to go. And please, let the message be loud and clear. Ban dog and cat meat trade. Thank you! Good work, ladies. Sorry, I didn't thank you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't thank you properly. I don't want to know.
Thank you everyone for watching. So yeah, if you want to help out, go online, sign the petition. Yeah. Hey. But yeah, it doesn't just stop with cats and dogs. You know, we need to end all species and we need to end all animal oppression. You know, all animals go through the same thing. They're all tortured, they're all mutilated, they're all, you know, even the most cushiest of animal lives still end up in a slaughterhouse with a knife stuck in their throat and their bodies hacked into little pieces. So it doesn't make a difference whether that's a dog or whether that's a pig or that's a cow. You know, you wouldn't want that done to your dog, so why would you want it done to anyone else's dog or another animal? Thank you, and please share if you can.